Hey there. According to YouTube here, it says I'm on live. It's Chuck Dransfield here with another installment of Chuck's Captivating Chat, the December 9th, 2024 edition. Shall I just say it? Where the hell is this month going? I mean, it was just December 1st. It was just Thanksgiving, and now Christmas is coming upon us. And like many people, I am not ready yet. I make a lot of gifts for people, like my nieces, my nephews. I have a little tradition where I make a little portrait for them each year. So I've got to get those knocked out this week. Been working on some commissioned art. I just got a piece in the mail Saturday to one of my kind followers. She commissioned me to do a portrait of her grandchildren. And that was my honor to do. And I was really pleased with how it came out. Hey, Ward. Hey, Joyce. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you for joining. It means a lot. So, working on a lot of artwork right now. But I will say it, if anybody would like to commission me for a piece, I could probably do at least a couple more before Christmas. Like here's an example of my work. This is a portrait I did of Butterfly McQueen from Gone with the Wind. There's another one here. I'll just pull out very quickly. Audrey Hepburn. I work with this technique of watercolor, and then I go over it. I put down many, many layers of watercolor, very thin, translucent, and then I go over it with colored pencils. And that's how I get really sharp detail, especially like with eyes and mouth, hair. That's what I love to do. I love to do portraits very, very much. I'm a big aficionado of old Hollywood. So more often than not, those are my favorite subjects to work with. But I just thought I'd show some examples of what I do. And if by chance someone would like a piece of artwork as a Christmas gift, I mean, not for me, for you to purchase to give, I could probably crank out a couple more pieces and get it to you in time before the holidays. And if you want to reach out to me, my name, of course, is Chuck Dransfield. So it's my name reversed, Dransfield Chuck, DRANSFIELDCHUCK @gmail.com. That's the best way to reach me. So enough said about that, but that's a little plug I'm giving myself for whatever it's worth. And let's see, who else do I have here? Oh, Diana, howdy. Kathy, I was just mentioning you. I didn't mention you by name, but I was just talking about what an honor it was doing that artwork for you, and how much I appreciate it. And Ward, Butterfly McQueen, she was nothing like Prissy in real life. Yes, and that is absolutely true. She was a brilliant woman. She was originally on Broadway. She was a serious actress, and a talent scout saw her in the late 30s and brought her out to Hollywood to audition for the role of Prissy in Gone with the Wind, which of course is iconic. And Butterfly was justifiably appalled by what a terrible racist stereotype the character was. And but she saw some things she could do with it, and she also saw the comedy potential of the role. And she took the role with the understanding that she could do other things in Hollywood, that she would be given a chance to play other characters. And unfortunately, that did not really manifest. Um, I can think of the maid role she played in Mildred Pierce with Joan Crawford. I forget what she did, but Prissy is what she's primarily known for. But she was not fond of that role. And she said in a later day interview, she said, I didn't mind playing stupid. I just didn't like the fact that people thought I actually was stupid. Butterfly McQueen returned to the stage, and she was in her early 70s, I believe, when she got her her college degree, she studied political science. I forget the exact title she earned, but she did go to college. She studied political science, and also in her 70s won a Best Actress Daytime Emmy for, a children's special that she, performed in. So, but yeah, Butterfly did some great things with her life. Um, in fact, there were some plans for this portrait I just showed you. Um, I haven't heard back from this person. Anyway, this here, I'll show it again. My Butterfly McQueen. I love doing this portrait. I wanted to make her look beautiful because I think she was beautiful. I tried to capture what was in her eyes. Um, but I had someone who collects movie memorabilia, and he approached me. He said that he had these blank poster sheets that she had autographed in the lower bottom. It was with the intention that an image of her was going to be lithographed onto the sheet. So she pre-signed these, and he had a whole bunch of them. And he approached me and said, "Why don't we do your artwork on these with the signature?" I said, "That sounds like a great idea." Until I started looking into it, and I found out what the cost of printing all of those lithographs, it was gonna be like 30, $40,000. And so we've tried to see if there's something more economical, but still quality, and it's one of those projects that never quite got to fruition. Maybe one day, maybe one day. Yeah, I, always believe there's a reason for everything. Yes, and of course, the wonderful Audrey Hepburn. I adore her. That was one of my favorite portraits I ever did. Oh, yes, I knew that, Butterfly McQueen did a cameo in The Mosquito Coast with Harrison Ford. I think that was the very last thing she ever acted in, because if my memory serves me, that movie was what, 1986, 87, and I don't think she lived much longer after that. I forget the circumstances of her death. I Seems like I recall she was badly burned or something, but I don't want to say that because that could be incorrect. If I known we were going to talk about Butterfly, I would have researched it a little better. But anyway, I while we're on the subject of movie memorabilia, do I want to talk about that now or talk about it later? Because there was one other. I'll come back to movie memorabilia, the subject, and a big reason for it. And I'm also watching for my cat Sasha. She was laying here on the couch, had all these plans. I was going to hold her up to the camera and take her little paw and wave to you. No, little Sasha, who's down here, decided 3 minutes. Oh no, here she is. She did decide she wanted to come back. She did. So this is my beautiful Siamese cat, Sasha. She's 9.5 years old. I've had her since she was, look at her, she doesn't want to be here. I'll put you down. I've had her since she was 10 weeks old. And do you see that way she pushed me aside, like, put me down, you creep. Okay, Sasha, she'll be right here unless she decides otherwise. But I was going to mention before I got into the movie memorabilia, there was a video with Shirley MacLaine last week. 90-year-old Shirley MacLaine saying that she's looking for a personal assistant. In fact, my good friend Joyce Petrus called my attention to that. Thank you, Joyce, and sent me the video. And according to Shirley MacLaine, all she's really looking for is somebody who will make a cocktail for her at 5 p.m. and then sit down for the evening and talk about all of her old movies. Well, Joyce, let me tell you, quite a few people came forward sending me that video, including my sister. My sister saying, "You have got to apply for this job." And my sister said, "For one thing, you're both from Richmond, Virginia. That's an icebreaker right there." And I thought, there's got to be a catch to this. Got to be a big catch, because I have actually talked to people over the years. Living in LA for 39 years, you talk to a lot of people in this town who work in the business, obviously. And I've had people allude to the fact that Miss McLean uh, can be a little temperamental, a little difficult, a little cantankerous. So I don't know if age has mellowed Shirley or if it's only intensified those qualities. But yes, maybe I should apply for the position, at least look into it. I've told stories of how I have met so many celebrities over the years, probably close to 500. I started listing them off once. Well, there have been some misses in my life. Shirley MacLaine was someone I actually had on my wish list of celebrities I most wanted to meet. And that was largely because I loved her book, Out on a Limb, back in the 80s. And that book actually was a catalyst for me in inspiring me to take some big risks in my life, some leaps of faith, like packing up everything I had in a U-Haul and driving 3,000 miles across the country to go live in Los Angeles. So I very much wanted to meet her one day. And this was when I was working in, I have many years in the health industry, vitamins, herbs, homeopathy, prescribing nutritional programs for people. And I've done that for a number of celebrities, by the way. Um, Anyway, where I was in West LA at the time on Pico Boulevard, just down from 20th Century Fox Studios. And we needed change. We needed some cash change, and we had a bank next door. So I volunteered. I said, okay, I'll go get us some change. I'll be back. I was gone for 5 minutes. I come back. Chuck, you just missed Shirley MacLaine. Shirley MacLaine was in here. And I'm like, no, no. No, it's the same thing that happened to me when Barbara Streisand, and any of you who have watched my shows knows how I feel about Miss Streisand. Um, she came into my place of work once while I was on my lunch break. And and we had a juice bar in the health store, and that's where she was. And I went to the counter and I said, "No, are you sure? Are you sure that was Barbara Streisand?" They handed me the credit card slip. There it was, Barbara Streisand. There was her signature, and I'm like, "No! No!" So, for all of the celebrities I have met, I do have some stories like that. Now I should look at some comments here. Um, Again, I need to find some kind of teleprompter where I can just look straight ahead and I can read the comments at the same time and make it kinda give the illusion and I'm looking at you and reading at this at the same time. But let's see here. Sorry, I moved my computer a second there. Let's see. By the way, by the way, are you ready for Wednesday? It's Brenda Lee's 80th and Rita Moreno's 93rd birthday. Well, all I can say is God bless both of those ladies. They are remarkable. You know, I get to go to a lot of industry screenings out here, around award season time, where oh God, I have cat hair on me. Sorry about that. That's the hazard of having a little Siamese princess like this. You have little strands of Siamese. But anyway, I go to a lot of screenings, and I think it was 3 years ago, 2 years, 3 years ago, the remake of West Side Story was out, Steven Spielberg's version. And of course, Rita Moreno, we all know she got an Oscar for the original version. He had a new role written just for her because he very much wanted to have someone from the first movie be in the remake also. So Rita Moreno was once again in West Side Story, and she appeared at a lot of the Q&As where they'd have the stars and cast, like director and writer and stuff, come out and do things with the audience. Well, the night I went, they didn't have any of the stars of the movie, but I would love to have been there when Rita Moreno was present. And Brenda Lee, that is so amazing. Last year, her rocking around the Christmas tree for the first time ever hit number one on the Billboard charts, a number one hit for a 78, 79-year-old woman. That was just fabulous. And she was so sweet and so endearing in the interviews and so appreciative. In fact, I just saw, a little interview with her on, I think it appeared on Instagram or something about 3 days ago. Someone was interviewing her, it was the subject of Judy Garland, which is gonna tie in with what I'm gonna talk about in just a little bit here. Um, Brenda Lee was 13 years old at the time, she having her first hit songs, um, and it was, she was I can't remember, she was in Vegas. I don't know if she was performing there or she was just there with her family, but it was the Sahara Hotel, and Judy Garland was in a lounge chair out by the pool, and 13-year-old Brenda Lee, I just obviously idolized Judy like many have, and understandably, got up her courage and went up to Judy, and she introduced herself, "Miss Garland, I'm Brenda Lee. Miss Garland, would you would you have one piece of advice you could give to me?" And Brenda said, Judy, without missing a beat, very seriously looked her in the eye and said, "Don't let them take your childhood from you. Don't let them take your childhood away from you." And Brenda Lee never forgot that because Judy said it with such heart and conviction and really meant it. And it was a simple piece of advice, but she adhered to that. She said it was quite valuable. So that came up. And yes, Diane, you said cats own you. Yes. So me. Yeah. I must behave. Oh, yes. Yes. She, no, she's purring right now. Maybe she'll let me hold her. Yeah, she definitely owns me. You know, I just pay the rent. I do the housework. It's her home. And I've actually told this story before. I talked to a psychic once, and she wants down. So there you go. I spoke to a psychic once, and I said, "Tell me, what does my cat think of me?" Now, how's that for a loaded question to ask a psychic? What does your pet really think of you? And this was a psychic I respected. And she said, "Well, first of all, your cat loves you very much. You don't have to worry about that." And I said, "Whoo, relief there." But she thinks she's the master and you're the pet. And I'm like, "Oh, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, oh, that's funny. That's funny. Funny." No, psychic said, "No, Chuck, I'm serious. She really does think she's the master. She's the owner of the home, and you're her pet." So is that true, Sasha? I guess I'm just her pet. Oh, well, I guess there are worse fates in life than that. Uh, see, I'm looking to see some other comments here. Yeah, where the worst thing is Miss McLean could say no. Yeah, oh, she might have more to say to me than that. Let's see here. Yeah, it would be an opportunity. I just have a feeling that, shall we just say, the line is probably going around the block and 3 miles down, applying for that position. I don't know. I should put my hat in the ring. I really should. Perhaps you, Miss McLean and Miss Streisand, crossed paths in earlier lives. Well, I would never rule that out. I'm a big believer in reincarnation, and sometimes I've wondered about that. When well, I don't just wonder about it. We've all had these experiences where we meet someone, or we read what someone's written, or we watch a performer, and you just feel this connection, this infinity with them. And I've had that many times where I've suspected there might be a past life connection of some kind there. I had that experience happen with a writer, a book that I loved very, very much, and then I met him 13 years later. We ended up becoming the best friends in the world. So I've had that happen. But let's see, what are some other comments here? Yeah, Miss Lee, she's tiny, 4'9". In fact, she made a new video last year for "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree," and you could see what a itty bitty little thing she is, she wears her hair up high. I think that's to give her the illusion of height, and of course, like Mae West, we know how Mae West gave herself height. I'm sure you've seen by now the pictures of those platform shoes. They're the soles were like that high, I swear, like 6 inches. They were very unique. You can Google search it, Mae West shoes. They'll come up where the top part of the shoes looked like evening shoes, like a woman would wear with her gown, but then there were the platforms built underneath. And that's said to be why Mae West had that distinctive walk on screen because poor thing was trying to maneuver on these stilts. But she was only about 5 feet tall, and I guess with those that made her about 5'6". And speaking of Judy, Judy was only 4'10". And I remember, I think it was one of the Hard Rock Cafe restaurants where they would have movie memorabilia on display. They had one of her dresses. I think it was from the 1954 A Star Is Born. And it looked like a little girl's dress. You saw how tiny Judy was. But my God, the power she had, the power within her voice to be so little. Let's see. I'm trying to see who else is here. Joan, Diane, Ward. Forgive me if I'm missing people here. I'm sometimes talking and reading these comments. It's like patting my head, rubbing my stomach, and drinking a glass of water and whistling. I need to get more coordinated about it. Ward, do you think Sasha would admit her being the master? I think Sasha's saying, I don't have to admit to anything. Some things are just obvious. um, yeah, but what's the word? But Miss Garland was surprisingly strong as a young woman. Ever see that movie which she pulled up Mickey Rooney on a table with one hand? Oh yeah, I know that one. She grabs him by the hair and pulls him up. Well, that was a bit of an illusion there. I think they choreographed that where Mickey jumped up and she held the top of his hair and it looked like she was pulling him up, but it's just the same. Maybe she was pulling him by the hair. Maybe she wanted to pull him by the hair. They had such a unique relationship. Um, where I think Mickey Rooney Mickey Rooney always said he loved her dearly, but he said to him she was like his sister. He always thought of them as more platonic brother and sister. He claimed he was never romantically attracted to her. Well, I've read accounts, biographies where Judy was very much in love with him and she saw it the other way around. So maybe she did want to pull him up by the hair. Um, I've told that story many times when Judy was a house guest at the late Charles Williamson's home. I've told you that how I went there and he showed me the guest room where Judy stayed and told me the story of how Judy went to the top of the staircase. She put the Carnegie Hall record on the stereo and Charles and his partner sat on the couch. And Judy at the top of the staircase in full voice, full performance mode, like she was playing to 500,000 people in an amphitheater, put on a whole concert just for the two of them. She did the entire Carnegie Hall concert from beginning to end in that house. But anyway, he was telling me that Mickey Rooney kept calling the house. And Judy was very annoyed, like he was a pest. Like, why don't you just leave me alone? Please. And Mickey was trying to get Judy to invest in he was always coming up with these get rich schemes. And he had this idea for Mickey and Judy dance schools, acting and dance which I guess if it had been managed properly, it could have worked. But he wanted Judy to go in with him and co-invest. And Judy was, as I've told this before, she was flat broke. She owed the IRS like something like close to $4 million. She owed a fortune to hotels. One hotel locked up all of her belongings, all of her gowns, all of her orchestrations, musical orchestrations in a trunk. One of the reasons she couldn't perform all of her stuff had been locked up. She was broke, and she kept trying to convince Mickey, "Leave me alone. I can't do this. I don't wanna do this." But privately, she said to Charles, "I wish you'd just leave me alone." So, that's my little personal story there, but I know they loved each other. If you've ever watched any of the Judy Garland shows, her variety series that lasted for 1 season back from 1963 to 64, Mickey was the very first guest. I think it's on YouTube. I know it was released on DVD, but it's so charming, and you see how much affection they had for each other. You can't fake that, and they were having so much fun, and it was bittersweet because both of them, they were only, I think he was 40 and she was 41, but they looked so much older. They both of them, I guess from all the Mickey had his own issues with alcohol and drugs like Judy. They both came from that same place, MGM, where they were being fed the amphetamines and things and worked and worked and worked. So that he had aged pretty badly. She had frankly aged quite a bit too. And here they were together and they were recreating one of the Andy Hardy skits. And they were doing it perfectly. They were capturing the whole thinking, the ideology of those characters. They just captured it, but it was something bittersweet and poignant seeing two very middle-aged people playing teenagers again. Um, but anyway, look for it if you can find it. I highly recommend it if you're a fan. Let's see, let me check some other comments here. Her daughter Lorna said, until the last part of her life, Miss Garland was surprisingly strong. Well, she was quite resilient when you consider all, and I hate to use a word like abuse, but for want of a better way of saying it, dear Judy did abuse herself quite a bit. The alcohol, the pills, and I'm not blaming her. I mean, I've known people with drug addictions, alcohol addictions, and I know the struggle they go through and how hard it is to get off of those things. So my heart goes out to anybody who's doing this. I don't mean to imply otherwise, but it is a fact. There was a lot of abuse to her body. She did a lot of things like crash dieting. Um, she did it a few too many times because you see Judy in those last years, she was very frail, very thin. I saw one picture where her legs looked like toothpicks. And in the late 50s, she nearly died from hepatitis. Uh, that was when Judy got very, very, well, she appeared to be very obese, but what it was, her body was full of toxic fluids. They had to drain like 20 quarts of fluid out of her body. And the doctor said to her, "Miss Garland, you're going to be an invalid for the rest of your life." Well, within a year, she was up there doing Carnegie Hall and doing movies again, doing her television series, touring the country. So I think it's amazing Judy lived as long as she did, that she did make it to 47. There was obviously a lot of strength there for her to be able to hold on. She did things that frankly would have killed people 10 times over. Um, and by the way, I met Lorna once. She was very sweet to me. I'm sure she's heard this type of thing over and over, but I just said, "Your mother moved me very much." And it was sincere. That's what I said. And she took my hand and she said, "Thank you. Thank you for saying that." Because that meant a lot. Um, I almost met her son, Joey. Um, well, I guess he goes by Joe Luff now and not Joey, but it was about a month ago when I was in downtown Hollywood at the dedication of the star for Juanita Moore. And there was a roped off area with some VIPs, and Joe Luft was there. Um, I didn't get a chance to go over to talk to him, but I would have loved to have met him. I've seen Liza in person. I haven't really met her, talked to her, but I have seen her in person. I saw her once coming out of the old Spago's restaurant, and then I've seen her a couple of times in concert. And I've also met Judy's former husband, Sid Luft. And he was married to Judy longer than any of the other husbands. They were together for 13 years, and of course, he's the father of 2 of her 3 children. And again, I was just very sincere. It was in a store in Brentwood, and I just said, "Mr. Luff, I just want to tell you, Judy moves me very greatly." And I didn't expect anything more than that. But he just lit up. He just lit up, and he wanted to talk about Judy. Really? He spent almost 40 minutes talking with me about Judy Garland. And, that's something I could talk about on another show here, or maybe make some videos about it. Um, but what touched me, and if you have ever read the biographies of Judy Garland, Sid Luft does tend to be vilified. A lot of bad things get said about him. All I know is when I've read those books too, but when I met Sid, if you had seen that look in his eyes, how much in love he still was with Judy, and that was real. I saw it for myself, and he spoke so tenderly of her. Yeah. So anyway, that's one of my other experiences with Judy. And I also had my friend Al Morley, my wonderful friend Al Morley, who was a personal friend of Judy Garland, and he told me a lot of great stories. So I have secondhand Judy Garland experiences. Um, but not I know. Well, obviously, I was a little kid and she died, so I never had the experience of actually meeting the great lady. Let's see, what are some other comments here? Yeah, Joyce, she said, yeah, people did tend to look older back then. Ward said, not Dietrich, Joyce. Well, let me tell you, Dietrich had her tricks. She had her bag of tricks. She was quite the magician uh, in keeping herself looking young. She was one of the first of the people to do the thing where you take your hair and you put it in little braids and you pull it back very, very tight. And then you also take surgical tape and lift all that up. That's what Lucille Ball used to do. And then you put a wig on top of that to cover it up. And Dietrich took it even further. She had a special head to toe corset made that pushed and molded and shaped everything to give her the appearance of a very young woman's figure. And on top of that, Dietrich was a master of lighting. That went back to her days making movies. She knew her lighting. So the lighting, the costuming, the corset, the lifts, all of that served to create the illusion of eternal youth. Joan Rivers told a story once that she was on a plane with Dietrich. They sat together in first class. And she said when Dietrich boarded the plane, she looked stunning. She was beautiful. But then when she lay back in her seat and started to fall asleep, according to Joan, everything fell down. Dietrich's face fell down. And furthermore, Dietrich was started to snore very loudly, which further killed the illusion of unobtainable glamour. And I'm not saying this to put down Miss Dietrich. I'm just saying that Miss Dietrich was human like the rest of us. But that was why we love these great old stars, because they were masters at creating these illusions. There's the expression for it, unobtainable glamour, meaning they created these images of perfection that no mortal human being could ever achieve. And it was my friend Evelyn Keyes, the movie actress in the 1940s. She was telling me about what it was like to be on a film set, because I was complimenting her once on how beautiful she looked in this film. And she said, oh, Chuck, if you knew what we had to go through. It usually meant being at the studio at 6 in the morning for about at least a couple of hours, sometimes 3 hours of hair and makeup. She said you had to have everything. You had to have your hair done. You had to get your nails done. You had to, Sasha, she just snagged me here. Sometimes you had to have body makeup put on your arms, your legs, or whatever's going to be exposed. It was a lot. It was a lot just to get prepared, just to go on the movie set. And then she said every single take, as soon as they were finished with every take, a makeup artist and a hairdresser would rush over and immediately do little touch-ups and fix the hair if there was a hair out of place or something. So that's why when you watch these old movies, they always looked perfect, because every single take they were constantly being touched up. Or if they did a people often wonder, how did they do those kissing scenes, and how is there not lipstick smeared everywhere, all over their face and all over the other person's face? And she said, no, that literally the makeup artist would come and clean you up and draw your mouth back on and paint it on. That's how that was achieved. So Dietrich was the master of that. Let's see here. Orson Welles stayed in love with Rita Hayworth despite their stormy end. Oh, I believe that. I believe that. I've told that, Evelyn Keyes was very close with Rita Hayworth. They were best friends when they were at Columbia in the 40s. And, I always love to hear these things firsthand. Evelyn said Rita was one of the sweetest, gentlest souls of any person she ever knew. She said Rita would never harm anyone. She was so full of love and grace. And Evelyn said that, if you've ever watched Rita Hayworth's movies, like when Rita danced, oh, I love to watch that woman dance. What Evelyn said, Chuck, you should have seen Rita Hayworth when she just walked down the hallway. She said it was, according to Evelyn, she said it was like having a spool of satin ribbon and just unfurling it. She said that's how Rita Hayworth moved and walked. So, and of course, Evelyn did have a very sad story many years later, because Evelyn in the 50s moved to Spain with her then husband, Artie Shaw, and then came back to the States and lived on the East Coast. And finally, in the 1970s, she decided to move back to Los Angeles. And she hadn't seen Rita in many years. And she came to call upon her. And Evelyn was later very upset because she had not been warned. She was led into the house. Rita was in the backyard. And Evelyn, she was so excited to see her. And she said Rita was just in a zone. Rita Hayworth had Alzheimer's disease, and Evelyn wasn't told. And Rita was just out of it. And Evelyn was saying, but Rita, it's me. It's me. It's Evelyn. It's Evelyn. And oh, here, Evelyn, it was like that. She was just gone. And Evelyn told me she left that house just in tears. And she was also, she said, I was mad. I was mad. Nobody warned me about that. Nobody prepared me. That's how I found out she had Alzheimer's. So anyway, that's just a little story there. Oh yes, and Marlene Dietrich's daughter, Maria Riva, is about to celebrate her 100th birthday this very Friday. Yeah, I had read that. Maria wrote a very, very good biography of her mother. I was surprised it was like 30 years ago. I didn't remember it being that long ago. It was a good book. Some people criticized it, but I thought it was mostly very affectionate. It was not like what Christina Crawford did with Mommy Dearest, or what Betty Davis's daughter, B.D. Hyman, did. Those were horrific, mean, vicious books. Vicious. And so I didn't think Maria's book was anything like that at all. And I thought it gave some great insight into Marlene Dietrich, including, I told the story once here about how I got an autograph from Marlene Dietrich. I was through my friend Al Morley. I got her address. In Paris. And it was in the 1984 Maximilian Schell documentary, where she wouldn't allow herself to appear on camera, only her voice. But he asked her how she started her day. And she said, well, I spend about 2 hours every morning signing autographs and answering fan mail. And I had to confirm she would sign things if you sent it to her and you sent her return postage. So I didn't get anything back for almost 8 months. But I sent her this beautiful glamour photo from the '40s, and she autographed it for me with a gold marker and have it framed in my hallway. But Maria was saying in the book, see, I assumed that when Marlene Dietrich was living in an apartment in Paris, it was something glamorous and beautiful, and view of the Eiffel Tower, from the window, and beautiful French antiques and all. No, no, apparently it was a little tiny one-bedroom apartment, and according to Maria, it was filled with trash, garbage, clutter. Dietrich at that point was in a wheelchair. Um, it's kind of sad the way her life wound down. And I think she was criticized for revealing that aspect of her mother, but she was just being honest. But oh, word, you got one from Mrs. Riva after writing her a letter after she published the book. Well, that's wonderful. That's so nice. Um, I don't know if Maria Riva, did she ever become an actress in her own right? I can't remember. Um, I mean, she's a beautiful woman in her own right, but she just didn't quite inherit what her mother had, but then who did have what her mother had? Her mother was a one in a billion. We love Marlene Dietrich. But let's see here. I said at the beginning of the show I was going to talk about movie memorabilia, and I said that it would tie in with Judy Garland. So you probably saw over the weekend a pair of the ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz went for $32 million. Now, I know technically it was something like 28 million, plus there was like another 4 million and something in commission fees and that type of thing. And it's my understanding there also was sales tax on top of that. Can you imagine, on $32 million? But anyway, one of 5 known pairs of the ruby slippers sold. And this pair was considered to be probably in the very best condition of any of the shoes. And the photos I saw, they just looked spectacular. I don't know if any of you out there have ever seen the ruby slippers in person. I have. I've seen the pair that's in the Smithsonian Institution, of course, in Washington, D.C. And there's also a pair here in the Motion Picture Academy Museum in Los Angeles. And those were purchased for $2 million by Steven Spielberg and Leonardo DiCaprio, and they donated them to the museum. And I think the other pairs are in private hands, but I'm glad there are at least 2 pairs that the public can go see. I am sincerely hoping that whoever bought these, the identity of the person has not been revealed, but I'd like to think they do the right thing and make them available to the public, or at least loan them out from time to time to different museums, because things like that belong to the world. They really do. Um, and if you know the story behind this pair of shoes, they were on loan to the Judy Garland Museum in Grand Rapids, um, Minnesota. Sorry to say Michigan, Minnesota. And it was there, they were stolen. And it blew me away when I saw that there was no protection. They were on a pedestal with a plexiglass cube on top. Apparently no alarm system or anything. And this person just lifted up the cube, helped themselves to the slippers. And now this is the bizarre part. The person who stole them claimed he had never seen. I'm just looking at the cat hair on me. Sorry about that, folks. Some of this is me, some of this is the cat. He claimed he had not seen The Wizard of Oz, and he didn't know anything about Judy Garland and the ruby slippers, because then I think, what the hell was he doing in the Judy Garland Museum then? But anyway, he thought they were really made of rubies. And that's the reason he stole them. He was going to take the shoes and take them apart and sell the rubies. Thank God that didn't happen. But I thought the irony of this is, at $32 million, these sequin shoes are probably worth more than if they really were rubies. So there is some irony there. Well, Ward, you said 16 million a shoe. I guess one could hop on one while preserving the other under glass. Ward, you need to get some scotch tape and rub the front of your shirt. I know, but I don't have any handy here, and I'm not going to get up in the middle of the show. Like, if you'll forgive me, you've seen me hold my cat. You know, this is why I've got cat hair on me right now. Strands of Siamese, silvery Siamese. So, so that's what happened. They frigging idiot thought they were really rubies. Now, at $32 million a shoe for a pair of shoes, I thought, well, I might as well bring out my ruby slippers. Yeah, I do. I have a pair. I brought just one here because of Sasha being here. I didn't want to take a chance on both of the shoes getting damaged. But there is a story behind this. There is a story why I have a pair of ruby slippers. And no, of course, these are not real. The real ruby slippers. I made these myself. And let's see if I can find the picture on here. Yeah. Can you see that? There's a book that came out about 30 years ago called The Ruby Slippers of Oz. It gives the whole story, the history of the 5 pairs of shoes. And there was a diagram at the back of the book showing how the shoes were made, how the sequins were laid down. And let's see, let me find the other picture here. There was also this picture, showed how the bows were made, how the rhinestones were laid down, the sequins, the bugle beads, and everything. So, using that diagram, I went to a vintage clothing store and bought a pair of 1938 size 6B, which is supposed to be Judy Garland shoe size, 1938 pumps that were pretty identical to what were used in The Wizard of Oz. And then I proceeded to spend 2 weeks laboriously putting down all of these little sequins and rhinestones. You can see I even painted the soles red, just like the original shoes, everything. They are pretty darn close to being replicas. So much so that on Facebook, I posted side-by-side pictures, my slippers versus the $32 million slippers. And I pointed out the fact that mine only cost $110. That and I own my mind, because I nearly went insane making these shoes. But the original shoes, of course, were worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz. My poor man's version, I took to Judy's grave, her wall crypt at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, and I held the shoes up to her wall crypt. And not to be disrespectful or anything. I'm sure I adore Judy. I would never, ever do anything disrespectful to that woman. But it was pointed out to be once by someone who worked in one of the cemeteries. I think it was Forest Lawn. He said, well, when people are put in those wall crypts, it's head first, feet outward. So I thought, that means behind that little slab there, Judy's feet. And I held the shoes up. And I thought, well, I can honestly say these have been a few inches away from Miss Garland, or do I dare say it, what's left of Miss Garland? But again, I say that respectfully. I'm very careful about that. I think anybody who knows my heart knows I'm not disrespectful in any way towards these people I love so much. But I once posted a picture of them, I think it was Instagram, Facebook, and I was holding them up to Judy's grave. And this one woman wrote me a nasty, nasty comment. How dare you be so disrespectful to Miss Garland? You should be ashamed of yourself. And I just wrote her back and I said, first of all, I have posted that picture for like 5 years now. No one has ever said that I was being disrespectful. You're the only person. And I said, madam, I can assure you, from people I know who knew Miss Garland, she had a wonderful sense of humor. and Judy loved her fans, and I think Judy okay, this is my opinion, but I think Judy would have loved people coming to her grave, holding up ruby slippers, celebrating her life, celebrating her memory, and that was the spirit I did it in. That's why. Anyway, that's my little soapbox there, but I thought while we're on the subject of ruby slippers, I have another one, and this is not one that I made. No, this is not from The Wizard of Oz either. Um, are any of you familiar with, am I saying this right? Moschino Couture. They make from Milan. They specialize in like leather purses, handbags, shoes, and the Motion Picture Academy Museum, when they acquired the ruby slippers and when they first opened in the gift store, was selling a special evening bag that was carefully matched to replicate the ruby slipper. Well, and no, I don't carry a purse. No, I don't, especially one with red sequins, a ruby slipper red sequin purse. But I just wanted to show this because I bought it just as a collector's piece. You see, it's a little evening bag clutch, and you can see how they did the bugle beads on the bows. Obviously, I did a better job with mine. They approximated it, but it is based on her size 6B shoe and the shape. And when I did see this, I said, I think I did a pretty good job matching them up when I made my own pair. And I was not going to buy this. It was outrageously expensive. And so you're going in shock. Okay, what are you doing holding this? Did you steal it? No, no. About 2 years later, they had a clearance sale where these were marked down 50%. And I deliberated and I deliberated and I deliberated. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to kick myself years from now for not buying one of these when I had a chance, because it's probably going to be a very collectible piece in time. And I've never actually used it, but I feel like, if I did, maybe it's something I could put my drawing pencils in or something. If I'm traveling around, I don't know if I want to walk around holding a sequined ruby slipper purse. Not quite my style, but I thought, what a great way to show this off since we're on the topic now of the ruby slippers. And of course, I'm going to put it back in its little bag here. And you thought it was a pillowcase. No, no, when you buy high-end purses and things, they usually give you like a little cloth bag to keep it in, to keep the dust off of it. Oh, what was that word? Oh, within the purse. Yes, yes. So anyway, that was my, get this back in here so I don't damage this, because even 50% off, it was expensive. But I have it. And it's great once in a while to pull out. Like sometimes I've done some videos where I've talked about the Wizard of Oz, and I'll either hold one of my ruby slippers or I'll hold that one up instead. So anyway, let me see here. I mentioned that I've told this before, but I've also seen the witch's hat from the Wizard of Oz. That was back in 1993. That was another auction. We have a lot of memorabilia auctions out here in LA, obviously. But I seem to see less and less of them because a lot of these pieces have just been consumed by the public, and there's less and less to sell. But they had, oh, no, pardon me. I have seen the witch's hat, but what I meant to say was the hourglass from the Wizard of Oz. That's what I saw in 1993. And somewhere I've got a photograph of myself with it, but there was a little card on the table. It said, "Please do not touch." Yes, I touched it, and I'm sure everybody else did too. But now I later found out, just like the ruby slippers, there are 5 known pairs. It said there were 6 altogether. There might have been more. This is typical of movie making. You've got to have identical versions of things because things get damaged or they don't look quite the same, because you've got to have these pieces look consistent from shot to shot to shot. Hence, that's why sometimes You'll have multiple costumes, multiple shoes, multiple props, so you can keep things looking fresh and new. It's like what Evelyn Keyes said about the makeup artist coming between takes and redoing her lipstick and everything, so she'd always look perfect. So there were several witches hour glasses made, and some of them were more ornate than others because there were, I think, at least a couple made that were used for close-up shots. When the witch is holding it over her head, and she goes, "Have some fire, Scarecrow," or where she said, and she threw the hourglass down and it burst into flames. Um, but they had that for the close-up, but then they had ones that were not so ornate, and they were made out of like balsa wood. So when they were thrown down, they would smash apart very easily. They were meant to be disposable. So I don't know which of the hourglasses I saw, but I did see that. I touched it. In 1993, I've seen the witch's hat. In the Smithsonian with Dorothy's Ruby Slippers, they also have the Scarecrow costume. And I told this story, I guess it was just last week, so forgive me, but for context sake, I saw Bert Lahr's lion skin costume, and I understand that went for over $1 million. And this was many years ago. I'm sure it'd go for a lot more now. But yeah, the costume was made from real lion skins. It weighed close to 90 pounds. And poor Bert Lahr, because, those early days of Technicolor, three-strip Technicolor, they had to use a lot of overhead lighting because you had three strips of film. So it wasn't unusual for those film sets to get over 100 degrees while filming. So poor Bert Lahr in that costume, he was just sweating and sweating and sweating. And from all reports, that costume smelled horrible. And they tried their best to air it out each night and clean it, but there was only so much they could do. And nobody really knows what happens to the Tin Man's costume. I know Jack Haley did not look back on that very fondly. He said it was an extremely uncomfortable costume and he cared never to see it again. But I think that was true for most of those characters with all the, those prosthetic makeup pieces they had to wear, and Bert Lahr and the lion skin and what have you. And I told the story about Margaret Hamilton having to be painted green, and then there was the fire on the set, the fireball, and the makeup artist said take alcohol and wipe her face down very quickly, her burned skin, so the copper and the green makeup wouldn't absorb into her body. It was extremely toxic. And let's see, what was that? What a freaky shot that had Auntie M within the hourglass. Then have the Wicked Witch taunt Dorothy. Yes, that was masterful, the way they did it. And, the way they did that, they had a film projector underneath the crystal ball, and they just played the footage. And, you've seen the movie. It looks amazing. But they did that for Auntie M, and they also did that for Margaret Hamilton. Auntie M, I'll give you Auntie M. But I think that's why so many of us to this day, how we have triggers, post-traumatic stress from childhood, things that trigger us to this day. There are so many people who say they're still terrified by Margaret Hamilton's The Wicked Witch of the West. And they hear that cackle, or that, as you mentioned, that scene in the hourglass. That, for a child, that's scary. I remember being scared when that would happen. I'd almost want to turn away, knowing that moment was going to come up where she was in the crystal ball. Lord, I was actually going to mention that story about Frank Morgan's coat because I thought that tied in well for all these stories about Wizard of Oz and costumes and props. Now, some say the story is apocryphal, where there are others who adamantly insist that it is true. But the story is they wanted to find the perfect coat for Frank Morgan to wear as the wizard. Now, one of the reasons I find it a little hard to believe is because, the great costume designer Adrian did every single costume for that movie. And he was so specific and so meticulous in creating the looks for everyone. So I find it hard to believe that Adrian would not have designed the coat and everything for Frank Morgan to wear. But anyway, the story is They searched through thrift stores and things to find just the right coat that had the gravitas, the elegance, but at the same time looked a little seedy too, because we remember the wizard, he was a big fake, a con man, a humbug, you know, he came there in a balloon from I don't know where he came from and landed in Oz. And so that was his coat. And so that's what they wanted to look for. And they looked in different thrift stores and things. And they finally found the what they thought was the perfect jacket. And it was during the filming. I don't know if Frank Morgan was the one who noticed this, but inside the pocket, there was like a little tag label or something that said L. Frank Baum, property of L. Frank Baum. And if the story is true, they approached L. Frank Baum's widow, and they also, I think through her, they found his original tailor who allegedly made the jacket and confirmed, yes, that was L. Frank Baum's jacket. And of course, L. Frank Baum, as you know, is the author of The Wizard of Oz. And how interesting the man playing the wizard was named Frank. But anyway, that's the story. And if it's true, that is extraordinary. And it's almost like L. Frank Baum's spirit was watching over that movie. I mean, we know that movie has a heart and a soul, and there's something truly divine about it. That's why somebody was compelled to spend $32 million on a pair of ruby slippers. I was reading. Oh, there was all kinds of criticism on social media. Well, all the starving children that could have been fed for $32 million, all the scholarships, education, social programs. Yes, I'm obviously that's a given. And yes, and I understand that one as well. But because I have some of my own movie memorabilia and things, and my passion, I have things of my own that I love very much. I don't have anything of that caliber. I ruby slippers, I had to make my own pair. But I do have some pieces and some things I've spent more money than I should have, and I've been criticized for it. But you do things for love and you do things that are right for yourself, and ultimately it is your money to use in whatever way you wish. And we don't even know anything about this person who bought them. Maybe, for all we know, maybe this person is a great philanthropist and has done great things. I said earlier, I hope this person will loan the shoes out to various museums and share them with the world and not keep them to themselves. I've often thought about that. What if I owned them? What would I do? And I thought, well, over there in my fireplace mantle, they would look really good. Of course, I have to keep Sasha away from them. Easier said than done. But I've thought, I would probably have them. I would enjoy them for a while, but then my conscience would be, yes, these need to be shared. And that's what I would do. I would loan them out, different museums and things around the country, around the world, so everyone can experience them. Because, you know, I've talked to a lot of psychics, intuitives who are in agreement on this. Objects hold energy. I had a psychic friend said she couldn't go into an antique store for that reason. She would literally hear chattering and conversation and coming from all the furniture. Yes, I know some of you say crazy. No, but this was a psychic I respected. She said she was so sensitive she could hear the energy coming from all the furniture. But I've always believed that things do hold energy. Like I've got one or two little things that came from I Love Lucy. I'm not going to say what they are because I don't think I should go public with that. But I love having that energy in my home. Something so beloved, so magical, so good. And the Wizard of Oz, magic. Those shoes, in a way, really do have magic, and I can see where someone would want to have them. And it's my great desire they went to the quote unquote right person, someone who's going to really love them, take care of them. One of the reasons I own some pieces of movie memorabilia, mostly autograph material. Um, but I've always shied away from like buying costumes, clothing, that type of thing, because there's a unique responsibility that goes with anything like that. Clothing, for example, you've got to climate control it. It's got to be stored under certain conditions. Those fabrics deteriorate. They're extremely fragile. And especially if it's something as historical as the ruby slippers, that's particularly sacred because as collectors, we are just guardians. We're guardians for the time being until they go to the next person, they go to the next generation, and then the person after that, and after that. But while they're under our stewardship, is that the right word for it? We have a responsibility to do everything possible to preserve it, to conserve, to not allow it to deteriorate. And that's the reason I've stayed away from things like that because I know that I'm not equipped to take care of things like that. But there have been stories of movie memorabilia being bought high-end auctions like this and then going to someone who didn't know how to take care of them and then they put them back on the auction block again and it's will be pointed out how much that piece deteriorated while this person had it where before it was at least being protected, climate controlled, kept in a vault or something like that. And that's a shame. That's almost when like Marilyn Monroe's happy birthday dress. And that's a whole show right there I could go into of when Kim Kardashian quote unquote, borrowed it. We don't know what the whole story is. If she paid off, it was owned by Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Hollywood. They have it under a plexiglass case, but I don't know if she bribed some people, what, or they loaned it to her, what the story is, but she wore it to the Met Gala last year. She's the only woman in 60 years to wear it other than Marilyn Monroe. And when the dress was returned, it was examined, and there are photographs on the internet where you can see the damage, where I mean, close-ups of where sequins fell off, where there are new rips in the dress, because that dress was made out of a I mean, in 1962, it was already a very, very fragile silk. It was a rare silk. I believe it was Jean Louis who designed the dress. He ordered a bolt of this from France. It was like the only bolt of this silk in existence on the planet Earth. And it was flesh toned to match Marilyn's skin. I don't know if they had to dye it or what, but it was, that dress in every way was meant to be for Marilyn. Marilyn went to Jean Louis and said, I want you to make me a dress that, quoting her, only Marilyn Monroe could wear. I want to be the only woman in the world who can wear this dress. And that's what he literally made for her until Kim Kardashian comes around 6 years later and decides she wants to be seen at the Met Gala wearing Marilyn's gown. And she puts new rips in it and causes some of the little, I started to say sequins. They were actually crystals, real crystals. Some of them fell off the dress. And it was also pointed out that perspiration, her body oils and so forth, that also may have further deteriorated the fabric. So anyway, that's my point about when people buy memorabilia, they don't always know how to take care of it. I've heard that happening with paintings. I heard there was I forget which painting was, but it was a famous piece that went for like over $200 million to somebody in Saudi Arabia who bought it. It was like, I forget what it was. Maybe one of you know, but it was a iconic piece of art. And he took it and hung it in his bathroom, in his steamy bathroom. And from all reports, the painting is deteriorating as a result of this. And, that's a loss to the entire world. These things belong to everyone. So that's my little soapbox there. I should look at some comments here. Oh yeah, War, you were talking about Jack Haley's Tin Man costume. Maybe he donated to the World War II metal drive. That would have been cute. I don't know. Most of those costumes just ended up in a warehouse on the MGM lot in Culver City. And that's how one of the first pairs of ruby slippers were found by a man named Kent Warner. He went into the warehouse. The MGM, this was 1970. They were in dire financial trouble, and they were auctioning off they were selling off, like, part of the back lot, and they were, going through their archives, the costumes, props, selling these off at auction, and he found, I can't remember how many pairs he found, but one of the pairs he found is in the Smithsonian right now, and when he found the ruby slippers, they were in very bad condition. They were the sequins, similar to what I did here, they were rusting. They were rusting. Any of you have ever gone to the Smithsonian Institution, you can see for yourself how the sequins, a lot of them are discolored and rusting and falling off, and the shoes are fraying. And according to Kent Warner, uh, they were even damp. There was like leaking water. There was like a leaking water pipe or something in the warehouse. So it was something that had caused water damage to them, and they were very dusty and dirty. Um, and it was so interesting because that 1970 would have been 31, 32 years after the making of The Wizard of Oz. And the little bit of irony is I made these about 30 years ago, and I've noticed some of my bugle beads here are starting to not rust, but they're discoloring. They're losing some of their red luster. So even mine are aging now in real time, similar to when they were first discovered. Let's see here. Where's some other comments here? Oh, Carol Burnett sure had a time keeping her Eunice frock intact. I wonder if there were more multiple versions of that because that of course was a Bob Mackie creation, and you watch all of those Eunice skits, she always wore the same dress. I mean, there may have been multiple copies of it, but I think the reason for that, they wanted the characters to be almost like cartoon characters, where they always appear the same. Like Mama always had the same dress on, Ed always had that shirt and tie, everything, so they kept that same look. Um, let's see, where's some other comments here. I wish there were could there an option to not believe that Miss Kardashian had gotten Miss Monroe's dress? Yeah, I mean, I was sorry when that happened. I mean, yes, obviously there are worse crises in the world, but that dress is historical for a number of reasons. And again, it belongs to the world. It belongs to future generations. And a dress that fragile to begin with should have been left in archival storage and not just being brought out for someone's folly. Plus, it's just the fact it was special that only Marilyn Monroe had ever worn it. The one and only woman in the world. Now, two women have worn it, and the other one's Kim Kardashian. But that dress was so unique. It was made so specifically for Marilyn. There's a book called The Last Take, and it's about the final 3 months of her life, and it goes into great detail about the creation of that dress. It was quite fascinating, because it was so tight. She had to be sewn into the dress, and she had Marilyn. When she went to Washington D.C. to perform for President Kennedy. Yes, you can draw more into that. But anyway, to perform on stage for President Kennedy, um, she had to bring her personal maid with her because her part of the job of the maid was so Marilyn could take breaks and go to the bathroom or whatever. She had to take little manicure scissors and just carefully, 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 carefully cut the back of the seam. And then Marilyn had to get back in the dress, and then the maid had to stitch it back up again. And so I don't know what they did for Kim Kardashian. I'm not going to I could make some bad jokes here about Kim Kardashian. I met her once. She was nice enough, but that, let's just say that cosmetic surgery she had on her derriere, I've seen it in person. It is strange. But anyway, I'm not bashing her. I promise I'm not. That's, again, like I said about the ruby slippers, when it's a person's money, it's her money, her body. It's a person's right to do whatever they wish. But I often wondered, how did she fit herself into that dress that was so specific for Marilyn? And just another comment It's an opinion, but when Marilyn wore that dress, I think you'll all agree with me, it was luminous, the way it sparkled, and it just from head to toe, Marilyn was perfection. And Marilyn, who was very conscious of what she had, that famous story with Paula Strasberg, you want to see me become her, when they were in Central Park and nobody was recognizing Marilyn. And she just made this little internal adjustment. And all of a sudden, dozens and dozens of people started swarming around her and they recognized her. Marilyn knew what she had. So those pictures you see of Marilyn and that was Marilyn with 500,000 watts of electricity coming out of her, full Marilyn Monroe. And she just was so dazzling. And the dress didn't overshadow her. She overshadowed the dress. Kim Kardashian wore it just looked dead. It looked lifeless. It just kind of hung there. It didn't have any dazzle. It didn't have that magic. I guess that's all I'll say about that. According to Mr. Louis, Miss Monroe insisted on being en naturel under her clothes. Oh, yes, that's very true. That's very, very much true. I understand from the book they had to do a lot of costume fittings, and Marilyn would have to stand on a pedestal naked while they fitted the gown on her. And according to the book, sometimes those fittings would go on for several hours at a time, and she never complained. And I understand Marlene Dietrich was the exact same way. I read that about her. She never complained when she'd have to stand there, sometimes like 8 to 10 hours, because she knew how important those gowns were and her appearance and how she looked in her movies. And so she happily went along with all of it. And I understand the first fittings they did of the dress, they had to use a muslin sheet, just to pin it around her just to get the first fitting of it before they had the actual French silk, the infamous bolt of French silk, the only bolt of its kind in the entire world. And then it took quite a few weeks. I think they had a whole team of people uh, hand sewing those crystals. There were over 6,000 crystals that had to be sewn onto that dress. And any of you who know anything about beading of clothing, it's very laborious, and often it does require a team of people. I don't know if you ever saw that Daniel Day-Lewis movie, Phantom Thread, about the London, um, not costume designer, couture designer. Probably not choosing my words right, but they have a scene where he's designed this wedding dress for a European princess, and he's ill that morning. And he falls over and he gets black shoe polish on the dress, on the whole skirt of the dress. And so they had to do an emergency where they had to call in the whole team of seamstresses. And there's this scene in the movie. It's like something like 20 women all around this table, and they're all sewing on that wedding dress, putting that together. It's just incredible the amount of labor that goes into anything like that. And Marilyn's gown was like that, putting all the crystals on there. Let's see what else. The comments here. Uh, oh, Ward. Yeah, I like your comment here. Totally agree. That second wearer wasn't fit to dust Miss Monroe's shoes. Yeah. Um, Glad you said that. I agree. Yeah, yeah, Joyce. Yeah, I know. There were several articles on the internet about the dress being ruined. Now, the Ripley's Museum, believe it or not, museum, they claim the dress was not harmed, but it was somebody who it was after the dress was put back on the dress form on the plexiglass display. Somebody went there and took their own photos. I think they took photos before, going over the whole dress in detail, and then went back and photographed it again. And you can see for yourself on the internet the damage to the dress. It's very real. And supposedly Kim Kardashian only wore it for like less than a minute. That's the story. She wore the dress just long enough to get out of the limo, walk up the steps, and then reportedly she went inside, quickly changed out of the dress, and then put on a replica of the dress, and it was given back. But apparently, because the dress was so fragile, even that 1 minute, that was enough, sadly. Uh, anyway, that's why I'm saying also, I hope whoever got the ruby slippers, I hope they take care of them. Uh, let's see, where's some other comments here. As per Miss Burnett, it was only one frock and it had been late 1930s bit of movie wardrobe. Now, I didn't know that. Because I've seen the costume sketch, Bob Mackey's original costume sketch for it, though. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he patterned it after a 1930s dress. He used that as the prototype, but there's a I think it might even be on the internet. It's the actual costume sketch. And I'm pretty sure that was made for her, and there were several, but that's an interesting story if it is true. Yes, when she sang that wholesome version of Happy Birthday. It's I remember seeing a Marilyn Monroe impersonator once. It was a man. I think it was Jimmy James, who did a wonderful Marilyn Monroe, but he, as Marilyn, was singing a number of her songs, but then did at the end of the show Happy Birthday and said, well, this is my one hit song. And it is true. I think most of us now think of Happy Birthday and Marilyn Monroe. And yeah, and President Kennedy saying, now I can retire from politics after having that song sung to me in such a wholesome, sweet way. Jackie wasn't there that night. You know, and what's interesting? Who was there that night was Maria Callas. And there are pictures of Marilyn Monroe and Maria Callas together. And of course, Maria Callas, you know her story. And of course, there's supposed to be a wonderful movie about her life with Angelina Jolie that just came out. It's in theaters now, and it's going to be on Netflix next month. I'm looking forward to it. But of course, she had a big, long affair with Aristotle Onassis. So I can't help but look at that picture of Marilyn and Maria and think both those women were thorns in the side to Jackie Kennedy. But how ironic they were together that night. Oh yeah, I know. Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Oh, I'm very aware, Ward. She had some big songs. Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. We're Having a Heat Wave, a Tropical Heat Wave, and all. But I'm just saying that was the joke Jimmy James had. Well, this is my one hit. Happy Birthday, because that's what she's best known for. And you know, I made a comment a few weeks ago. If you ever get a chance to get a compilation of Marilyn Monroe singing, and there are a number like CDs, and now you can download music. I think there's something like about 40 songs altogether that she recorded. She had a beautiful voice. Beautiful. There was something about Marilyn's voice. It was very soothing, calming. It was very lovely. I enjoy listening to her a lot, and I highly recommend it if you ever want to uh, get like a little sampler album of her songs. And of course, Having a Heat Wave. I think I mentioned here. I when I was working in West LA, same place where I almost met Shirley MacLaine. It was just down from 20th Century Fox, and I spoke to a man who was one of the dancers in the movie There's No Business Like Show Business. You know, the movie with Ethel Merman and Dan Daly and Mitzi Gaynor, and of course, a young starlet named Marilyn Monroe, who was saying, we're having a heat wave, a tropical heat wave. Then I'm trying to think of the other songs she sang in that movie. But he became friends with Marilyn. He and his wife became friends with Marilyn. And he was telling me how sweet she was. And she loved children. And she volunteered to babysit for his, I can't remember if I think he had a couple of daughters. I can't remember now, but it was his children. Marilyn Monroe used to babysit for him and his wife. And it was always her pleasure. She volunteered to do it. And he said she was such such a just a love to be around on the film set. And, I saw a thing, it was after Mitzi Gaynor died, and, a lot of her old interviews were popping up on social media, and Mitzi was talking about working with Marilyn, and Mitzi said, "Let me make this very clear. Marilyn Monroe was a very, very talented woman." And I thought, I'm so glad, um, that, to hear people worked with her acknowledge that type of thing. Because I've always felt that too. Like when I listen to her sing, or even when I watch her movies, like "Don't Bother to Knock." And this was like 4 years before she ever went to Lee Strasberg in New York and studied the method and all that. This was one of her earliest films, and she was a marvelous dramatic actress. Marvelous. I was just blown away, very moved by her, and such a great comedian and singer. And say nothing of that presence. So many women tried to imitate her. You had a lot of imitators back in the 50s, like women like Sherry North, Mamie Van Doren, Jane Mansfield, not to impugn any of them, but none of them could approach what Marilyn had in her soul. Um, let's see. Oh, hey, Pam, thank you for joining. You had frost on the trees today. Oh, Pam, I think you sent me a video earlier today. I have been so busy. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I think about you all the time. I sent you one on Saturday, and Pam and I are usually really good about communicating all the time. But sometimes we all just get caught up in our lives and we get busy. And I said to Pam on Saturday, I can't believe a week has gone by. Please forgive me. I'm not ignoring you. But thanks for joining, Pam. Oh, and Joyce, yeah. Joyce, you're there. You're part of the family. We Joyce and Pam's husband Eric, we did a little surprise for our mutual friend Anastasia Pavlov, who's sat on this couch and done this show with me sometimes, or we've walked around the sidewalks and done things together. It was a belated birthday, and we threw a virtual birthday party for her. Had the laptop here with all the split screens. It was just it was a beautiful night, and I think it meant a lot to all of us. I think I can say that, and, it was a great way for all of us to catch up, and I think we're all in agreement, we gotta do this more often. So, anyway, been on here about an hour and a half. That's about my average now on Mondays. I give more time to the show than I used to because I haven't been making videos. I figured this is like my weekly contribution to this channel to at least keep it alive until I get back to it and make some new videos. But I've got about 700 in the archives if you're interested. Stuff about old Hollywood and I Love Lucy. Um, and of course, on Tuesdays, I do a very different show with my dear, dear friend, Dr. Whimsy Anderson. It's called Taco Tuesdays on her channel, The Oracle of Whimsy. And that's the show where we talk about a lot of current events. We get a lot more serious on there than I ever do here. A lot more political stuff too. I think the only time I ever got political on here is when I was showing my Kamala Harris portrait and talking about it. And had somebody troll me, but thankfully, Pam, one of my administrators, took care of that. Bye bye. But for the most part, it was positive. So I do Taco Tuesdays. That's my other show. And bam, one of these days. I don't want to say too much. We're just throwing around some ideas for something we may do later in on a weekly basis together. And um, I find that I like doing these live streams. I enjoy doing these more than actually making the video. There's just something fun about just dropping whatever I'm doing, because more often than not, I'm doing my real life work, like making phone calls for Dr. Whimsy, because in real life, I work as her assistant. So sometimes I will be making phone calls to patients and clients up until about 2 minutes before I go on and do this. So this is actually like a nice little rest. It's a great way to have a visit with all of you. There's all of you, you're just wonderful. You come here every week to join me, and I couldn't be more grateful. It means a lot to me that you support me like this. And Ward, your mama, she's got a birthday. Well, happy birthday! Happy birthday to your mother. Ward, are you doing anything special for her? Are you doing anything special, Ward, for your mama? Well, anyway, people are wishing her a happy birthday, and that's a nice thing to do. I didn't even this is the thing. When I don't see all the comments here, I just see above here. Before we go, how about wishing my mother a happy 97th birthday, which is sometime this week. Yes, happy 97th birthday. That is fabulous. Oh, War, congratulations to both of you. I don't know if you saw last week on Jimmy Kimmel's show, Dick Van Dyke, 98-year-old Dick Van Dyke, who is going to be 99 on December 13th, was on. And Dick Van Dyke, his mind is still present, his personality, he's so sharp and together. And Warren, that's wonderful. Your mother is still very much together. Oh, that's lovely. That's really lovely. I'm so happy for both of you. And you're taking her out to her favorite restaurant. Oh, great. Well, may it be as special as it can possibly be. Um, but yeah, when I was watching Dick Van Dyke last week, I just like, my God, it's wonderful he's still around. Well, in fact, it wasn't like the week before that, Thanksgiving, he and Julie Andrews, she's a kid at 88, but it was a special about the making of Mary Poppins. And I thought, now how incredible. Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews are both around 60 years later to talk about Mary Poppins. That's amazing. That's miraculous. You know, I've got to go in a few minutes here, but I met Dick Van Dyke once about 13 years ago? Yeah, 13 years ago. It was when he was signing his book, his autobiography, and it was at the Grove Shopping Mall here in Los Angeles. And he was only going to sign 200 books, and you had to get a bracelet, a little wrist thing and get in line. Well, I didn't get there in time. So I was leaving. I was kind of dejected. I'm not going to see Dick Van Dyke. Well, in came my good friend Michael Stern, who was, by the way, if you don't know Michael Stern, he was very close with Lucille Ball. And he said, Chuck, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I came here to see Dick Van Dyke, but I got here too late. And he said, oh, here, come with me. I've got Rosemary here. We're going up to the green room to see him. And there was Rosemary in her wheelchair. Now, I had met her once before also. But anyway, I said, sure, let's go up to the green room. So I pushed Rosemary's wheelchair. We got in the elevator together, went up to the second floor, went down the hallway, and I'm standing above Rosemary, and she knocks on the door, and the door opens, and it's Dick Van Dyke. And he's like, Rosie, I'm so happy to see you, and all that. And oh my God. And I felt like an intruder. I was eavesdropping on their private conversation, but how special was that to be there with Rosemary and Dick Van Dyke, and also Larry Matthews, who played little Richie, their little boy. He was there also. He's not little anymore. And I didn't know Dick has his own YouTube channel. I've got to look out for that. And what's that? Great Cakes, Joan and Joyce. Speaking of cakes, I think it's time for me. Once a year, I'll bake a cake, if even then. But I make a killer carrot cake. It's my mother's old recipe, and it's a recipe. It's like 80 years old or even longer than that. And I thought I would make one or maybe two and just cut it up into pieces and wrap it up in cellophane and give it to people as little token Christmas gifts. There are people I'd love to mail it to, but unfortunately it has a cream cheese frosting, so it's very perishable, so I can't do that. What was that? Rosemary Knew Everyone from The Girl with the Velvet Swing? Oh my god, I'm sure she did. Well, when you consider she was a major star when she was only like 7 years old. She was a child star, singing star. She was billed originally as Baby Rosemary. And there are some films of her from like 19 early sound movies from like 1928, 1929. And boy, she could sing as a child. She was brilliant. But I understand she knew just about everybody. And, in the 1940s, 50s, she's performing in Vegas and she knew all the big stars there. She and Lucy were very close. Oh, Joyce, your mother lived to be 96. How incredible. Yeah, my parents made it to 83. My mother made it to 83 and my father made it to 89. Yeah, but, it's just amazing how people are living commonly into their 90s now and even beyond that. Yeah, it's wonderful. So, before I go, does anybody have another question or comment or anything? Or shall we call it a night? Ward, I was a late in life baby. Well, I was too. I was too. Uh, that's why I had parents that age. My only sibling, my sister, is 14 years older than I am. My parents spaced their kids 14 years apart. I was like the menopause baby. I was like the baby, well, we better have this kid before it's too late if we're going to do this. That was me. I used to assume I was an accident, and my dad confirmed to me, no, no, we made a very deliberate decision to have another kid. But my mother later confessed to me when she had a baby at 40. It was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? I don't know what she meant by that. But, um, she did. She was like Lucille Ball. She had her first child at the age of 40. So anyway, all of you, thank you so much. This is my joy. I love doing this. This is one of the reasons I'm on here for like an hour and a half every Monday. It's just fun. And it's fun to connect with all of you. I appreciate you all very much. And I'll be here next week. Same time, same place. Uh, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And of course, tomorrow, Whimsy Show, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I'll see you around. Good night.